Water. We drink it, we swim in it, we eat it. No, seriously, you can eat water. It is the basic essential fuel for life. No water means no life, as far as we know. That's why there's always such a commotion when water is found outside of our atmosphere. Extraterrestrial water could potentially mean extraterrestrial life. Water outside of our atmosphere is about 25 to 50 times the amount we have here on our blue watery marble. And that's only counting the liquid water we found. There's gas and solid water too, you know. But let's go back to the water we have access to. Earth's water. Why is it so important to humans? Other than the obvious fact that we literally become a human jerky in the process of dying, water has always meant so much more than just drink to not be jerky. Let's start from the birth of organized society. We're in the 4th millennium BC and the Sumerians, a population of mysterious origins, were in the middle of a migration when they stumbled across something wonderful. The two rivers Tigris and Euphrates. The land was fertile and the cyclic floods and rainfalls granted an excellent arable land. There they took possession of the territories, bringing technological innovations, such as compressed earth buildings using the mud from the river, cuneiform writing, the wheel, the plough, levees, and all sorts of inventions that raised the Sumerians to the status of one of the first ever civilizations. All thanks to the two rivers. All thanks to water. But the Tigris and the Euphrates didn't only provide the Sumerians with crops and agriculture. Sumerians discovered that they could exploit watercourses to trade, explore and expand their civilized society in a much more efficient way. Note that according to historians proper roads were to be created a couple of millennia later, so movement between settlements wasn't as easy. Rivers were the highways to human dominance over nature. Another reason why the Sumerians were so successful is that the way the two rivers drew on the land allowed for a fantastic defense against external threats from neighboring people. And so the Sumerians were able to stay in Mesopotamia forever. Until they didn't. So, water is important, right? Our survival as a species depends on it. You could argue that thanks to the hydrological cycle, water is never going to run out. Well, while that's true, it's also true that 97% of it is salty. We need that 3% of fresh water in order to live. And it needs to be clean, to avoid serious illnesses and even death. So it's considerably more difficult to survive, but we managed thanks to various filtering methods that we learnt through the ages. So how clean is the water we drink today? Women consume about 2.7 liters of water a day, men 3.7 liters a day. But are you sure what you're drinking is pure, virgin, unadulterated water from a fairy's tit? Well, chances are, you're wrong. Plastic bottled water is proven to have an interesting amount of microscopic pieces of plastic, that we conveniently call microplastics. Have a look at this cool graph. Scientists have proven with lab tests that all plastic bottled water contain microplastics. And we continue to produce hundreds of billions of plastic bottles every year. So where do microplastics come from? Well, they come from drum roll bigger pieces of plastics we throw around. Throw a plastic cup in the ocean, it'll slowly disintegrate thanks to the strength of the elements, leaving behind a bunch of microplastics. Even burning plastics produce microplastics that will rise in the atmosphere and land everywhere, so it may happen that microplastics get carried around by the wind and settle on a natural water source. Everything produces microplastics, so it's everywhere. If you live in a city you probably breathe them in daily. Are they harmful? Some scientists say no. They have proven through research that microplastics don't damage marine life at all, and same goes to our body. But if you ask me, constantly taking in these kinds of plastic doses is sketchy as fuck. Reuters estimated that in a day we consume about 0.7 grams of plastic, 5 grams a week, 22 a month, 248 a year. That is a lot of plastic. Our system seems to be able to get it out no problems, but who knows what the long-term effects could be. Again, scientists say it's safe, but scientists also said that it was safe to drink radioactive water back in the 20s. It's true that science has evolved monstrously from 100 years ago, and it's not exactly a fair comparison, but still, kinda makes me sus. Just like water filtration systems make me sus. I'm talking about these active carbon ones. They work all right, making tap water cleaner. But carbon water filter pitcher owner, do you change the filters often as recommended? Do you really? Carbon filters are actually a really good place to grow some bacteria, studies show. But okay, let's say that microplastics aren't a problem. You know what is a problem? Globally, in 2017 there were at least 785 million people with no access to basic water services, and more than 884 million people did not have water safe enough to drink. More than 2 billion people did not have access to basic sanitation, like toilets. And there's way more. About 3 billion people worldwide lack adequate facilities to safely wash their hands at home. In sub-Saharan Africa, 75% of the population lacked basic hand-washing facilities, followed by Central and Southern Asia at 42%, and Northern Africa and Western Asia at 23%. Also, that's data from 5 years ago, and the situation today is the opposite of better. So try to imagine the numbers we'd have today, considering the fact that in the past few years the world has had other more important problems in their mind. And also that population keeps growing. Speaking of which, in Tunisia, because of population growth and poorly managed water supply, it is estimated that by 2030 the people won't be able to be adequately supplied with fresh water. China is well known for not having water clean enough to drink, their water resources being filled with industrial waste or general pollution. Moreover, just recently PRC used the amount of water that could have quenched 900 million people for a day, to make artificial snow for the Winter Olympics in Beijing. Here a lot more can be said, but this is not a China video. In Saudi Arabia, a country mainly relying on underground sources, water supplies are running dry and the kingdom is spending a huge amount of money on desalination plants that purify seawater from salt. And that is a solution that brings other problems on the table. Desalination is a process that requires a huge amount of energy, so to produce pure water a lot of greenhouse gas is released. This is why in Riyadh, a glass of water costs more than a glass of petroleum. Trading drinkable water for pollution is not a good long-term solution, but it's what countries in the Middle East are heavily investing in because of the short-term benefits. But this doesn't mean the West is completely safe from water problems. California is one of the fanciest regions on Earth, and yet it has to endure a worsening drought problem that is the main cause of the rampant wildfires crisis the Bear State is having, but droughts are hitting all of the USA's southwest. But let's talk about climate change. Our seas are getting warmer, the polar ice caps are melting and the sea level is rising, we've all heard it. But there's a silent killer here. Salinity. The melting ice doesn't contain salt, so the salinity levels in the oceans are decreasing drastically. This has a huge impact on marine life, with the delicate ecosystem changing, the reefs disappearing and, most worryingly, the streams are slowing down. To put it simply, ocean currents are Earth's heat pump, they move warm waters from the equator to the poles, keeping the climate at bay. Europe's climate is heavily influenced by the Gulf Stream, which runs at approximately 2 meters per second, bringing 100 million cubic meters of water with itself. Salinity drops, the ability of water to retain heat decreases, speed slows down due to water becoming lighter, and in the worst case scenario the current stops, bringing an ice age to Europe. Nature is surprising and unpredictable, so it is possible that it may auto-balance to keep the climate mild, but it would for sure bring devastating consequences to our society. But as stupid as this sounds, most politicians don't really care. Because money has always been the reason why anything happens. Let's talk about fracking. It is a method of extracting oil and gas that is far more efficient than the traditional methods. Fracking enabled the USA to become the #1 oil producer in the entire world in 2019. This is an evil method of making money for different reasons, but because this is a water video, let's focus on the following point. Fracking requires an enormous amount of fresh water that not only is taken away from a people that is already experiencing a severe water crisis, but it's injected several kilometers underground where it breaks the rocks to let the oil or gas up and out. The problem is, this water is often poisoned with chemicals, I say often because each company has their secret chemical recipe like an Italian grandma, and it sometimes doesn't stay there. Even though there are scientists who say that the study found no releases of hazardous hydraulic fracturing chemicals to surface waters in California, and no direct impacts to fish or wildlife. Or there's no evidence that fracking chemicals seeped into drinking water, others say the exact opposite. The truth is that malfunctions can and have happened, with wastewater contaminating the environment with devastating effects. Not only that, water can seep from the depths of the ground, contaminating underground water reserves. Joe Biden had made the ban of fracking a priority in his to-do list during his presidential campaign, but once in power he denied he ever said that, contradicting himself. Trump accused Biden of wanting to ban fracking, Biden denies. Trump wants fracking. Biden also wants fracking now. You can see the stupidity of all this. Fracking has to be eliminated. But the industry has boomed in the past decade, and nobody in power wants to stop it. Let's talk about how Santa's daddy is actually exploiting water resources. It's one of the most recognized brand in the whole world. Anyways, to make half a liter of the famous soda, Coca-Cola said in 2010 that it takes 35 liters of water, with most of it used to grow sugar beets. The numbers never quite added up though. The company proclaimed good intentions in a 2016 statement published in the New York Times that, for every drop we use, we give one back. But after just 1 year of reporting into Coca-Cola's water program, it showed how the company grossly exaggerated its water records, tarnishing all their future plans with sustainability. In 2007 at the WWF conference in Beijing, Coca-Cola's CEO at the time said that the company pledged to replace every drop of water they used to make Coke water neutral and to achieve a natural balance with the communities. The goal was to reach this by 2020. Did it happen? Of course not. There have been many protests by locals all around the world who blamed the company for stealing the water supply. Coke has been part of Mexicans' every meal for their whole life. In some cases the soda even got mixed in with religion, and it's one of the reasons as to why in Mexico there's a massive concentration of diabetes. 11 million people were affected by the disease in 2015. The most famous case is in San Cristobal de las Casas, where a Coca-Cola plant has been draining the water wells for decades, leaving the local population with only their sugary death to drink. A Coca-Cola spokesman claimed Mexicans are more prone to get diabetes genetically, and that it's not the company's fault. While scientific research does suggest that Mexicans of indigenous ancestry have higher rates of diabetes, local advocates say this puts even greater responsibility on multinational companies that sell products high in sugar. Former Mexican President Vicente Fox, who was in charge from 2000 to 2006, helped Coca-Cola seal a mind-boggling deal, paying 10 cents for every 1,882 liters of water. For 10 cents. That's nothing. But how did they manage this? Vicente Fox, former president, was also former chief executive for Coca-Cola in Mexico until he resigned in the 70s. What a coincidence. Humans have the right to fresh water. It is written in several documents from the UN, most famously in the resolution adopted by the General Assembly on the 28th of July 2010, approved by 122 nations with none against. But this doesn't stop industries from poisoning the waters. To make and cultivate any type of food, water is required. About 70% of the global water usage is destined to agriculture. You've all seen the infographics. In a single quarter-pounder hamburger there's about 2,100 liters of water. For a t-shirt it's about 3,240 liters. To stay positive, these numbers are given from the incredible research from the Water Footprint Network team. Or any other product that requires water to make, which is almost anything if you look close enough, and just think about all the wasted surplus water. Our society's dependability is like a finished fractal that ends in water. We think we depend on a lot of products, when most of those consumer goods end up being a derivative of water, the short way or the long way. Water gives us so much. And we're killing it, but not in a good way. We're killing ourselves. Not only with fracking, we're killing it with ignorance. We give water for granted. Just look at the Cape Town water crisis from a couple of years ago. Nobody really gave a shit until the government decided there was going to be a day zero when water would run out. I'm talking to us privileged people, not the poor 2 billion people that don't even have a decent toilet. Water is everything we are, and we're killing our children by not giving it credit and the proper respect. We learn at school that water is a pretty simple substance, 1 part oxygen, 2 parts hydrogen, give it some heat and boom. Water. So why aren't we creating water? We could solve a pretty good amount of our problems if we got all sciencey with it. We have the ingredients everywhere, we literally breathe them. Well, let's rewind, Will Smith meme. 1 part oxygen, 2 parts hydrogen, give it some heat and boom. Pause, quite literally, it is fucking dangerous. Oxygen and hydrogen are 2 extremely flammable elements, and the combination and heating up of the matter results in an explosion. Ever heard of the Hindenburg disaster? It was a big blimp that was filled with hydrogen to keep it afloat. Blimps were all the rage back then. Well, after a long voyage through the Atlantic Ocean, a little spark from static electricity, or some say sabotage, mixed the oxygen around it with the hydrogen inside it, made it go boom into a big fireball that completely destroyed the Zeppelin in 30 seconds and killing 35 people. The explosion did create a bunch of water though. Water is really hard and dangerous to make, that's another reason why we should look up to it. Not poison it and plant it underground, not shoot it as snow to make a foreign dictatorship look good, we have to share it. There is hope though. Day zero in Cape Town never came, because people started saving water, being more careful on every drop they use. Day zero on our planet should be announced soon, as humanity's greed is blinding itself from seeing the truth. We need to feel the flames of hell burning our feet to become aware of the fact that we're dying just to feel good for a moment, without care for the ones who are suffering and the ones who will come next.